everyone, I'm Lilah McDonald, a teenage social entrepreneur and founder of Water Us. I'm also host of NZ Business Magazine's podcast, Sustainably Ever After. Proudly brought to you by Office Max, New Zealand's leading workplace and education solutions provider. I'll be exploring the incredible world of sustainability and entrepreneurship. On this podcast, I'll be talking to guests who are making waves in the world of sustainability. Those who have built businesses with a purpose, those striving to make their companies greener, and those leading the charge for social and environmental change. This episode, I am joined by Dave Rouse, founder of CarbonClick, a business focused on helping people and businesses offset their carbon emissions.
At Office Mags business accounts, pay less. Sign up at officemags.co.nz/payless. Let's get it done. T's and C's apply.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks very much, Lilah.
So before we get into CarbonClick, I just want to understand a bit of the background. So what were your interests growing up?
My interests growing up, I grew up out in the bush, so I was always out playing with my friends, either riding around between each other's houses, which was quite a long distance between each other's houses, or playing in the trees, or just, we would go out camping when we were 10 years old without our parents in the wilderness. So I guess most of my time growing up was spent out in nature, enjoying the great outdoors.
Do you think that connection to nature kind of evolved into your interest for sustainability, or do you think it was something different?
Yeah, absolutely it was that. It was that and the fact that we lived very sustainably because it was inconvenient to live any other way. So we grew our own produce, not all of it, but a lot of it, because it was convenient, because you could just go and pick stuff out of the garden and so on. And, we had trouble with rubbish collections and things like that. So we didn't want to generate rubbish because it was just a hassle to deal with. And I guess when I moved from there into closer to town, I just saw a different lifestyle where everything gets thrown away and so on. We did a school trip to the rubbish dump where I saw, everything around that rubbish dump, nappies in the streams nearby and things, everything, plastic bags blowing around that birds had picked up or the wind had picked up. And it was just horrible. And I thought, what are we doing? We don't have to live like this. You can live completely sustainably. So at that point, I thought, well, I've got to educate my friends because they don't know any different, and I feel like it's the right thing to do. So that was kind of a bit of triggering when I moved from living, I guess in harmony with nature more, to immersing myself in a very different culture closer to the city.
Yeah. So you mentioned educating people about this. Did you find that people were open to you're hearing what you thought and telling them how they should be doing things?
It was hard. Some people were open to it, some people were not, because it was more convenient to have their little pack of chips in their lunch and lots of single-use plastic and so on, and that's all that they knew. And so it was a case of having to try and show them pictures of here's the damage that's being done. And I know we had Greenpeace came to our intermediate school it was called Project Jonah, which was about the dangers or the challenges with whales, the fact that they were being harvested and targeted, the fact that marine pollution was affecting them. And that was something that my friends kind of connected with. So there was some sort of connections there that I could just encourage them and remind them of that.
So it's kind of about finding what resonates with people and using that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. You studied at Auckland University.
Yeah.
What did you study?
I started off studying medicine.
Okay.
And then I swapped over to studying engineering and flying planes. So
that's a bit of a different career path.
Very different, yeah.
So what made you change?
I didn't like people dying. So I thought that was going to be a pretty tough career.
Yes.
And I was very immature, as 17 or 18 years old, male brain matures pretty slowly. So I guess I probably jumped the gun with making that decision. I quite enjoy medicine and the medical fraternity, but anyway, I also got involved in business, which I started really enjoying. So that's ultimately where I went down the path of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So after you finished studying at Auckland University, what did you do from there?
From there, I tried to get a flying job, and that was really difficult. So I found a way into that, which was to work for this airline that needed auditing, and I did an auditing qualification so that I could audit the company for them and help them to comply with their regulations. And then I cut them a deal to say, I'll do your auditing for free if you let me fly your planes.
Oh, right.
And by the way, I'll fly your planes for free as well. So it was an irresistible deal for them. And whilst that was a great way to get some airtime and quickly get to where I wanted, I didn't actually enjoy flying as a career.
Yeah.
But I saw a business opportunity there, so set up a base for them in Auckland and to help drive costs down for them. And that I really enjoyed. So I ended up with that as a business, and it was successful until the airline, our only client, went broke, and then it was pretty painful. But I learnt a lot, and I set up another business, or bought into another business, and grew that. And that was in the mechanical space, an automotive workshop, and then all the same skills that I was learning about building a business and operating a business were transferable, and so I scaled. So I bought another mechanical workshop, panel and paint shop, and so on. And I had thought getting into that I could get back into car racing, which was a hobby of mine. But I realized a few years in that I actually hadn't done any racing, and why am I doing this as a business when it's not really what I love? So I sold and made good money out of the sale. And I thought, well, this is an easy way to make money, just growing businesses. So I, bought and sold a number of other businesses along the way that just weren't running well.
Okay.
So go in there, fix all the problems with them, and then watch the profits come in and watch the business grow. It's like just taking the handbrake off by putting systems and processes in there and turning them around, getting the culture right. And I always put sustainability at the core of them, so that people working for those businesses felt like we were different, like we had a sense of purpose, that it was to be the better business in whatever that industry was, better for the planet, and better for the customers. So I went on doing that a few times, I think about 10 times, and then had a good exit, made some decent money, and decided I wanted to get into charity now and just be a good human and give back. So at that point, I set up Sea Cleaners, which was to remove single-use plastics from the marine environment, with 4 other co-founders, and that was great fun. So I was just doing that for a while, and angel investing, trying to help other Kiwi entrepreneurs that were trying to do good for the planet to get their businesses up and going and funded. So that was really what I focused on for the next little while.
So you mentioned when you were working with all of those businesses, buying and then selling them, you made sure to keep sustainability at the core of your kind of beliefs. And did you find that brought you more customers? Were people more inclined to use you as opposed to competitors because that was a selling point?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But we knew what we were doing was right.
Okay.
And the thing is, the staff that started believing in that mission as well would become very loyal staff members, because they felt they were working for a company that was doing something more than just coming to work 9 to 5 and trading their time for hours, like a company that was actually changing the industry and leading by example and all of that. And we won quite a lot of awards as well, which is always nice, motivating. for the team. So if you've got a strong team, that helps build profit because you're not turning over staff all the time, and they really care. So if you can build that care into your business, it becomes a much better business to operate. Whether it attracts different customer base or not from the environmental perspective is sometimes, yes, it does, and that's great. It never has a negative effect. But usually the fact that the staff, they stay with the business for longer, and the fact that the staff start caring a lot about the business and what we're doing, that shows, and the customers know that, and so the customers love the staff, the customers love the business.
Okay, so in 2019, you founded CarbonClick. What inspired you to start CarbonClick?
What inspired me to start CarbonClick? It was really simple. I was investing in clean tech and climate tech. I'd spent a year learning about climate science because I didn't understand it. And I don't like it when I don't understand something, especially when the whole world is talking about it and I don't know what side to take. So I spent a year studying that and then decided I can't unlearn what I've learned because now it's sitting on my shoulders as a weight and I feel like I have to do something about it. So I started looking for climate tech companies to support or investment options that would help our planet. So through that, there was a really simple idea that a couple of the guys that built the platform for Air New Zealand and worked on the platform for Air New Zealand had come up with. Their customers were always asking for more transparency and traceability so that they could see where the money was going. They knew that the airline wasn't clipping the ticket and that they could actually trust that the project had happened, that the project was reasonable, and that the project had received their money. That was the most important thing. And so these guys came to me and said, look, we want to start a business. We've got a platform that we want to launch. Will you fund it? And I said, yes, as long as you can get a good operational person to run it as well, because there was a product and a tech guy with all the insights from Air New Zealand. So they couldn't come up with a CEO. So I said, well, I don't want to let this opportunity fail. So I'll be your CEO for the first little while to help get you up and going. And that's where I became the co-founder and investor and CEO all at the same time.
So could you please tell me a bit about how CarbonClick works? Yeah,
sure. So really we calculate emissions from things like a flight. And then we give them the option to offset those emissions by integrating into the booking flow. So when you go to find your flight that you want to book somewhere, if the airline is a CarbonClick customer, a little button will appear that says, here's the carbon emissions for this flight. Would you like to offset it? Here's the price to offset it. And you just click a button or tick a box, and that's included in your airfare. And then the platform, once the flight's been processed, the platform sends the customer an email with a receipt that says, hey, we've received that money from the airline for your offset. And here's where we've deployed that money to. And by the way, we've also audited that project that we've deployed the money to. Here's the audit results. Here's the track and trace so that you can see that your money has reached the project and they've registered that. So it's a full transparent trail. So we give you the option to offset something. And then if you want to offset it, then we show you that that offset has been placed and paid for and the project has received that money. So in an instant, that's really what the platform does. There's lots of other cool things that it does to support businesses that want to decarbonize and offset, but that's really the core.
Is CarbonClick available, say, if someone was ordering clothes or food? Could you use CarbonClick then?
Yeah, you can neutralize the carbon footprint on anything that you want to. You want to make sure that you're not just offsetting. You want to make sure that you're first removing all the carbon that you can. So making all of the systems and processes as efficient as possible, so that you're not unnecessarily generating pollution and carbon and so on. And then because we don't have electric planes and electric ships and so on and so forth, even the best companies still have a carbon footprint. So then we can offset what's left. And that's the types of companies that we work with are the best companies in the world that are as low carbon as possible. And then the last little bit we can offset, or their clients can offset.
Could you please tell me a bit about some of your initiatives where the money would go if someone were to donate?
Sure. So we prefer nature-based solutions, which is where, as things grow, trees in particular, they absorb carbon and they release oxygen back to the atmosphere. So it's not just absorbing carbon, it's also releasing oxygen, which is pretty important for the rest of humanity and everything's survival. So we almost always have an element of nature-based solutions in a portfolio of carbon offsets. The types of projects we support are native or indigenous reforestation projects. So these are projects that'll be resilient to climate change. So not just pine forest, which is monoculture and high fire risk and so on, but beautiful native bush that you're going to enjoy walking through one day or having ecotourism businesses through one day and so on. The examples in New Zealand, there's Banks Peninsula is a really good project down in Canterbury, and in Kaikoura you've got Flax Hills, which is a forever forest. And these are regenerating farmland that wasn't very easy to farm. Some of it's steep terrain, some of it's just, hard to farm, drought prone. But the advantages in Flax Hills and so on, there are some native species like royal albatross that nest around that region. So you're creating or recreating a habitat that they used to have before it was farmed. And that helps all sorts of other biodiversity and so on. So that's the kind of projects that we love. They've got lots of co-benefits with them.
Okay. So when you started CarbonClick, obviously you wanted it to be successful because you'd invested in it. Did it take off immediately? Were people keen on it?
Before we'd even built the platform, we had signed agreements in place with airports and airlines. And so it was something that airlines had recognised, we actually are being asked about transparency around the carbon offset program, and what you've got looks great. Unfortunately, by the time, a year went by that the platform was built, COVID had hit and all the airlines let go of a lot of their staff, the airports let go of a lot of their staff, and so we had to start again after COVID. And of course it's become quite popular in a post-COVID world.
Yeah, well, even in COVID when all the flights dropped and things like that, I imagine there was a huge opening in the online shopping market and things like that. Did that part get accelerated in COVID?
Yes, everybody learned how to shop online all of a sudden. And so there were emissions from all the courier deliveries and so on. So we integrated with a number of those online shopping platforms like Shopify, Magento, WooCommerce, where people build their own shopping sites because everybody started becoming an overnight entrepreneur as well. Making jams at home and publishing them online or whatever they could make. So we integrated with those, Shopify type platforms, and we had over 1,200 businesses that added CarbonClick to their cart. So that meant that your shipping emissions could be offset, and really you could just add an offset at $2 or whatever you set. And that was I wouldn't say hugely successful, but we got really good uptake rates. Like in certain sectors, maybe as high as 35% of people shopping would add click to offset, which was great. The only challenge that we had was a lot of them were small businesses that wanted a lot of tech support, and for the volume that they were trading, it was uneconomic to try and support them. So that was a hard part about that.
So CarbonClick is a business focused on making other companies and consumers more sustainable in their practices. What are some things that you do within CarbonClick on a day-to-day basis that are to be more sustainable?
So for us, we've got a team who are all pretty green, as you can imagine. So most people are biking to work and so on. We, as an organisation, we offset our carbon footprint anyway. We do things like minimising flights. So and part of the challenge with being an international company is that we need to be in different markets in person to service our clients. But what we try and do is, instead of going 1 week, coming back from one region, we'll go for 3 weeks and cover 3 similar regions close to each other, and then come back, so that we're kind of...
So you make sure it's the smallest carbon footprint possible.
Yeah. We fly economy. We make sure that we are reducing the number of long haul flights to service as many clients as possible, with short haul flights in between. And that's really the sorts of mentality that we take when we decide how we operate the business. And we tend to internally try and promote vegetarian lifestyles and so on, amongst whenever we have shared lunches and so on.
So there was an experiment done a while ago where basically there was a preschool, and they told the parents what time to pick the children up, but a lot of the parents kept on running late. So they decided to say to the parents, if you're late, we'll charge you, because we have to pay the staff overtime and everything. But they found that actually increased the number of late parents, because they thought, we're paying for it, so it's okay. And some might argue that CarbonClick kind of has that mindset as well, potentially, because, well, you mentioned it's better to decrease your carbon footprint before offsetting it. But people might start to think, well, I wouldn't normally buy this t-shirt because I know it comes from a long way away and it's bad for the environment, but I can just offset it, so that's okay. What would you say to that?
Yeah, and that has to be really carefully managed. Otherwise, that's the unintended consequences of us trying to do good, is that people will do more consumerism because they think they can, and they've removed the guilt from that consumerism, and that's what we work hard to avoid. So that's part of choosing the right brands to partner with. So if you look at Etihad Airways, for example, on their website and on their carbon offsetting information, for example, they say flying is bad for the environment. However, you can mitigate a small part of this by offsetting if you do have to fly. So they're coming out with an outright statement, so that people know, actually what I'm doing is bad for the environment. But, we don't want a video conference into a wedding or a funeral or whatever, we're humans and we need to connect.
Yeah. So you mentioned that a lot of your projects involve things like growing trees and bush. How do you deal with the delay between a customer buying a flight and then going on that flight and having those emissions created instantly, to growing trees, which could take years?
Yeah, good question. So the way that we work is by purchasing carbon credits. There's 2 ways that the funding can work. There's carbon offtakes or carbon credits. Offtakes become credits over time. Carbon credits are issued where you measure the tree growth or the biomass growth that's absorbed the carbon. So it's actually already happened before the flight, and that's measured as something that would not have happened unless the carbon funding was coming in to support it.
So you start before it gets funded.
Yeah, that's right. And typically how a project will work, like if we take Flax Hills in Kaikoura, for example, is that the farmer will go to the project developer will go to the bank and get a loan, and that bank will say, are you sure that you can get within 5 years this amount of growth and this amount of carbon credits? yes, okay, we will fund that as long as you've got the carbon credits lined up that will repay this loan. So then they say, cool, they go and they plant it out, and not much happens in the first year or the second year, but then by year 4 or 5, those plants start to grow more and more each year, and to a measurable amount where they start issuing carbon credits, and those credits are used to repay those loans and so on. And then because the whole cycle works, they go and buy more land that's marginal farmland or land that should be turned back into native bush, and they repeat the process.
What happens if you don't get enough credits to repay the loan?
Well, then the farmer would say, oh, maybe I should have stuck to farming, and we hope that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And part of that is where the pricing of carbon credits sits, is that the price has to be economic for people to do it. The numbers have to stack up.
Yeah.
And it's a moving target because the carbon pricing fluctuates. It's a commodity, it's moving. But the people in New Zealand that have replanted and grown natives that we're working with have not only made a good return better than their farming, they've repaid their loans and so on, and the project developers have done well, the farmers done, or the landholders done well. So it's working well here in New Zealand.
So you mentioned before that it's really important to try and cut down on carbon footprints, but it's kind of impossible to eliminate it altogether. There's always going to be, something bad for the environment that's happening that you can't really help. So what advice would you give to businesses to balance out their bad?
Yeah, you've got to be practical and pragmatic. I mean, we don't want businesses that are trying to do good go out of business because they've gone overboard and they can't afford, they do more environmentally than they can afford to do, and then they fall over, because then that leaves the bad guys out there.
Yeah.
We want things to be done as much as is possible, but as also practical. And by definition, sustainability has to include financial sustainability.
Yeah.
Otherwise, either you're running a charity or you're driving your business backwards. You need to be able to balance them all together, and do as much as you possibly can without suffocating the business. But let that be your point of difference that hopefully helps you to grow and attract more business, retain your staff better, and so on.
Is offsetting a good solution for all businesses who want to be more sustainable and do something that creates carbon emissions?
Absolutely, as long as they're also reducing the emissions. So,
so you're not counting on offsetting.
Yeah, not relying on offsetting solely. I mean, offsetting something that you can support right now that's helping fund brilliant projects right now. And you might say, oh, we'll just save up to put it towards an electric plane, which might be here in 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in 5 years when it's getting closer to that, you can start saving for the electric plane. But right now, for that first 15 years, you might have had a whole forest that's actually saved the planet quite a lot. So let's do everything that we can as quick as we can while we wait for some of the other technology to catch up.
So you mentioned you travel a lot for work. Have your experiences from around the world helped you with your sustainability initiatives and given you ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you go to conferences, as United Nations conference, where you see what the challenges are in different countries, what the legislation is in different countries, what's working, what's not working, what's backfiring in some cases. Then you bring it home and you rework your business model, factoring that in.
Is there a top tip that you've learned from overseas that to help your business be more sustainable, would you say?
A top tip from overseas. Gosh, that's a difficult one.
Or a top tip in general, just for anyone who's listening that wants to make their business more sustainable.
A top tip that I've always gone back to is look at where you're spending money, because that's where your carbon footprint is. So look at your supply chain. if you're spending a whole lot of money on fuel, that's probably a good place to start. Do I have a fleet that could be electrified or, something more fit for purpose? If you've got a high energy bill, is there something that we're doing wrong here? Or if you've got people that are doing a lot of commuting to and from work, do you need to reduce the number of in-office days to get the right blend of environmental care and face time for people and so on? So really, I would be looking at where the money is being deployed as the source of where the emissions are being generated.
Being sustainable can also be expensive though. So if there were are there any areas of sustainability that would be best to put money in first, that would do the most with least amount of money?
Yeah, so the first thing is always questioning whether you have to spend that money at all. Do I need a new electric car? Do I need a new this or that? Or is there an alternative that might be more sustainable or have a better outcome? Because we're creatures of habit, so we do what we're used to doing, and that's a problem. So that's the first thing that I would probably address.
Okay. So everything that you've accomplished so far and with CarbonClick is all amazing, but what would you say your overall goal is, and what do you want your legacy to be for future generations?
Yeah, so my overall goal is to, I guess, be a little bit like Robin Hood, is redirect where the funds are flowing for carbon offsetting, because there's some bad projects out there that are sucking funds and resources away from the really good projects, because the pool is only so big of people that are willing to do things, or legislation that's putting in place measures that businesses can afford. So what we want to make sure is that resource pool is being redirected to the best projects in the world, and that they are flourishing and doing their part to help us on our journey to fight climate change. And it's got to be done in parallel with reducing, decarbonising at the same time.
Okay, I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for coming. It's been fascinating.
Thanks very much, Lilah.
A special thanks to sponsors of this podcast, Office Max, whose vision is to empower sustainable and successful workplaces. Learn more about how they can help your business at officemax.co.nz. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and stay tuned to nzbusiness.co.nz for more details on upcoming episodes and bonus podcast material. Let's make our world more sustainable, one story at a time. See you soon!
At Office Max business accounts, pay less. Sign up at officemax.co.nz/payless.
Let's get it done.
T's and C's apply.